Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. I'm gonna record the new one. Beautiful day. And a beautiful video. In this one, I want to talk about the four dysfunctions or four directions of life. And before I talked about two directions of life, which is the first thing that we have to uh, realize is which way are we living? Are we living from our emotions and are moved by our emotions at the causal level? Or are we alchemizing emotions and then letting that spirit move things for us because we paid our dues and the desire is coming and being fulfilled for us? So there's a wrong direction. Now, of course, in the wrong direction, I have to say that it's a conflict-based reality, the matrix or the dark matrix, if you will. It's a conflict-based reality. It reconciles itself through conflict. Okay. In this case, we're talking about psychological conflict. Okay. And so everything in this is based on a conflict. This is why you may notice, if you're observant, that there is no way out. As long as you're part of the matrix, there's nothing you can do to avoid conflict. Is the entire matrix is conflict based. Okay. um, and in fact, you are also going to probably be stuck in a cycle and learning, all the psychological tricks of how to remain there. And of course, all sorts of like teachings of how the psychology, you know did you know that men are evil, did you know that women are evil, or you know no, men are not evil, women are not evil. The dysfunction, the dysfunctional matrix, everybody in the dysfunctional matrix are to some degree evil. Okay. And I want to talk, I want to just describe those four. If you look at the cross and you have the center, right? Right? And then four things away from the cross, from the center of the cross, four directions. Those four, you can call it four dysfunctions, because there's only four issues with the psyche. Okay. And then before I talked about pain and pressure, and pain going into fear, anxiety, nervousness, and neurosis and stuff like that. And they also said pressure that goes into depression and stuff like that. Turns out that there are two more, and they correspond to the elements of nature. Fire, when it's too much fire, that's hell, that's pain, that's fear. Water, when it's too much water, at the point of pressure, there's pressure, the sensation of pressure, depression, heavy. In Spanish, pesoso means heavy. That's where laziness comes from there. You feel heavy under a lot of pressure. That's when it's too much water. You add a little bit of fire to that, and that pressure alleviates. That may be like, moving, going to the gym, or anything that's to do with fire, right? The same way. Now, the other side of fire, like if this is the point of fire, its intensity, the other side of fire is earth. Because if you look at lava, when it solidifies, it turns into earth. That's how earth is. It's some sort of structure, right? And as I'm explaining this in a physical reality, this is not a bad thing, because it forms a certain type of memory, and it's useful. Structures, we build houses, those structures are important. right? Societal structures, at that it has the importance. However, in the heart, um, none of these elements should be there, because, okay, let me just finish this with the air. Okay, so there's also air, and oh, so by the way, sorry to just got a little bit distracted here. Going back to Earth, Earth also has a certain type of dysfunction. When it's too much of it, it's rigidity. It's like compulsive behavior, you know, and just God forbid someone's gonna snap you out of that compulsion. You know, it's obsessive compulsive disorders, stuff like that, right? So that's the uh, trajectory, I suppose, right? And of course, when you heat up the water, you get air, and so there's air, and air is like a smoke. That's a delirium. That's like illusions. That's where something that is not real, but you believe it is so. And so, four horsemen of the apocalypse denotes those four dysfunctions of the psyche, because humans tend to end up onto one or the other extreme of that. Okay, if you live life in that direction, okay, moving away from your emotions. All right, so also I just want to take a little note about these references in the Bible. As you can see, I use these references, and sometimes they are cool references to use because there is a structure. I like the Bible has a certain type of code, a structure, but it's written in a storytelling manner, and it's trying to communicate the way the consciousness works through the storytelling. And to me, that's not always ideal, because right now in the modern life, we have people who understand physics, and so then through physics you can explain consciousness much better. Some people understand computers, so through, you know, simulation metaphors and video game metaphors, people understand consciousness much better. That's why I argue that that code of the Bible can take many different forms and possibly needs to be updated into more modern, easier to understand consciousness, because consciousness is, excuse me, Bible is the consciousness manual. This, you know, and of course, because it's a consciousness manual, those stories are obviously been repeated over and over again. It's not actual specific story, if you will. It's just, you can see that in anybody who's living this life. All these, anyway, I don't want to speak too much about that. It's just that I want to say that most people are somewhere in one of those four directions or misdirections, and some sort of dysfunction. And sometimes, for example, if you see somebody's like OCD, they may be repeating the same thing over and over in the Bible, but there's no substance there, you know. So anyway, let's forget about this. Let's move on. Okay, so we don't really need to investigate too much. We don't really investigate too much in this dysfunction to realize that, okay, there are four directions that my psyche may go, one or the other, in the dysfunction. The question that you should ask right now, okay, so what is the remedy? It's not going to be what the Matrix is telling you, you know, like to act a certain way or do certain things, or that's this, like, no. Because if you are functioning in some this, you know, if you're functioning on one of those spectrum, you're going to be in a conflict-driven relationships with others, because, you know, if you're a little bit too much fire, then in order to balance it out, you're gonna meet somebody who's too much water. You know, I don't want to get into this too much, but I'm just saying that it's conflict-based reality based on your psyche. So there's nothing wrong with these elements in the physical reality, and there's nothing wrong with these elements in the reality that is called your body. And I include even not not just your physical body. For example, your memory. Your memory may not be here; it's a part of consciousness, but the memory is necessary for your body to function, and it's part of the body sphere, right? It's not part of the mind or the heart. Long story short, what I'm trying to say is, you all those four directions, all those four elements, when you're heavy in one or the other, should be alchemized back into ether, if you will, the fifth element, right? Because you won't find the answer in any other way. The point of this game is to you may have a fire in your heart, you alchemize it back to 0 point. You may have too much water in your heart, you alchemize it back to zero. You may have too much earth in your heart, you alchemize it back to zero. And you may have too much air in your heart, you alchemize it back to zero. And sometimes you may even notice, as if you're going through this alchemy path, but you may notice that you may even come across these four extremes. You may get in a state of consciousness that you may be akin to hell, and you're gonna have to break through that. You may go to the state of consciousness that's akin to abyss, and you may have to go through that. You may go to the state of consciousness akin to delirium, hallucinations, in seeing something that is not there, not real, or being smoke being blown up your butt, or whatever. You may go through that, and then you may also go through some obsessive habits that you keep on repeating and expecting different results. You may need to break those also. Okay, they're all coping mechanisms to hold on to the matrix, but when you break them, you fall through the cracks into the ether, where your heart is now on a 0 point, and from there things are clear. The way things work are clear. You're more now interested in having good spirit in your heart, and then you use your imagination to create whatever you want, and use your body, these elements that just the problem in your heart, because your heart must be infinite, not temporal. Your soul must be infinite, not temporal. And the second you split the ether, it splits into those four elements and creates time. Like, you can even see the hourglass. You have like 8, the shape of 8, right? That's the hourglass. And so then you have that triangle at the top and a triangle at the bottom. And at the bottom, that's fire, earth, and then at the top, that's right here, would be water, air. Okay, and in alchemy you can see the symbols depicting there's only 4 triangles, and 2 of them are with the line up or the line down. Okay, so that's what this is trying to say. It is part of time, but when you alchemize all that, when you bring back all of that back into the whole, you have the infinity sign, right? The sideways 8. That's why, like, sometimes people refer to cross or shamrock, and that's what this symbolizes, like the time and infinite. And so we want to play this game of infinity and time. When you live a life in the right direction, alchemizing your emotions, your heart becomes infinite. Okay, and your mind and body may belong to time still, and that's okay, and that's normal. Okay, as I call it, you're losing this memory, like emotionally stored memory, right? Your heart becomes something that has no memory, or at least no memory that was temporal. It has an infinite, never changing information, which is wisdom, and infinite, ever changing flux, if you will, which is love. And and that's how we live our life. And in fact, when we live our life and we try to accomplish our desires, our soul desires, right? You may say, okay, I want this, but then when you alchemize, you realize, oh, I want that. That's what really fills my heart. And then you get what you actually soul desires. And in that respect, you're growing. You're growing in your soul and you're accomplishing your desires. That's the whole point of life, is to grow in your soul and accomplish your soul desires, which is actually very connected, if not the same thing. Because you can't grow in your soul and not have your reality change the way the soul wants it to be. It just doesn't work like that, right? The people around you may change. And another thing I want to say about this is that once you live a life in this direction, it may appear that like it's a very loner type of life, but that is only because you've been part of the matrix and now you're entering a different way of life. And so by definition, of course, in the contrast, you will feel like I'm alone because you are trailblazing something. And by that definition, because you're trailblazing something, there's no one in front of you. It's just you. There's no one's gonna help you. There's no one's gonna support you. But at the same time, no one's gonna betray you either. They can't betray you anymore because it's all you now, and you directing your life the way the soul wants it to be. And in the path of that, you meet the people who are also on the same, and your paths cross. And so that's why you meet your real soul mates, not this matrix illusion bullshit, which is nothing but physiological responses. That's the only way to meet your soulmate, if you live through the soul. And the soulmate will never betray you, because soulmate doesn't have the programming that the matrix people have, because it knows that your desire and their desire are compatible, totally compatible, and there's no conflict there, right? And you meet the people that you're not in conflict, but you're in a harmony. Or rather, all negative emotions are being reconciliated in through harmony, not through conflict. Okay? And so there you go. There's two ways of living life, through conflict or through harmony, and there's nothing in between. Because if you belong to the matrix, everything that, if you engage there, everything there is going to be conflict based, you know? And that's just the truth. And more people are going to start living this way. But by the way, of course, as you can see, somebody who lives in this direction cannot really relate to somebody who lives in another direction. Of course not. And we shouldn't, you know? How can they relate to you? And how can they understand, you know? Like if you're in a certain state of consciousness and you see things from a different perspective, if they're not in the same state of consciousness and you can't see from the same perspective, how can they relate to you? They can't. And this idea, like sometimes, like when we go on this path, is like, well, maybe when someone come with me, it would be nice if someone would come with me on this on this journey. No one's gonna come with you. You have to go through it alone. And once you go through it, then you'll meet the people that are your real soulmates, that's based on the soul, and not just the same old fucking vanity, you know? That's why you look, and even you can see it based on this society is now developing this society that is harmony based, holistic society as it's sometimes called. It is developing things like Web 3.0 based on the sound principles of how it all works, and a lot of people want that. So this society is developing, but they're not on Instagram, they're not on Facebook, and that's where the matrix usually lives. They're on other, right now I'm using like Minds to replace the social network or Facebook. Pixel Fed is to replace the Instagram, and share with a small group of people that are like-minded and also don't want to share it, but do not want to belong to the corporate manipulative social networks. And as an example, things like Bitcoin. Um, there is a culture that's being developed right now, little by little, but it's not governments. No one is in charge of this. It's happening just purely through the heart of people who live in that direction. And first, maybe it's going to be small, right? But we're all connecting little by little, and we know how to live life. We know how to fulfill our desires. We know that there's no such thing as traumas. We don't live in a conflict-based reality. We don't subscribe to this bullshit nonsense psychology. All of that, you can just flush it down the toilet. All of it. And even me talking about this is sort of still, I'm kind of trying to build a bit of a bridge. And if you're ready, invite you that, like, yeah, if you go that way, that's what's going to happen. But there is the world on the same planet. You can live in a completely different state of consciousness and have like-minded people sharing the same, and of course, once you in the matrix, you got to watch your back all the time, but there is a space where you can relax and no need to watch your back, because there are a bunch of soulmates around you that are, protecting each other, and you don't have to worry about getting stabbed in the back. Okay? So you don't need to know anything more if you're interested in living in that direction of harmony. You don't need to know anything more, but that psychologically there are 4 directions of malfunction, and that they all can be alchemized, and no one else can do it. Psychologists cannot do this for you. Nobody can do this for you. Okay, only you can do this. And once you do it once, you realize that a lot of all, the things that you were holding around you were just a dead weight that you gotta cut it off. Okay. Now, what else can I say about this? Oh, I may say something about just like an offshoot about this. You may notice a phenomena that seems like a short-term memory malfunction. You may, for example, find yourself looking for something, right? And then, boom, you suddenly you forget what you were doing, and then you recall again from scratch. And as you recall, you see things in a different way. You say like, "Fuck! I remember I placed this here, but now I found it somewhere else." There's a little bit of everything is relocated, and you may say, "Well, maybe my memory is going array." Okay, maybe my memory is going array, but it may not be your memory, because if you're moving from one timeline to another, the way it's, you know, like, because everything from the past is your memory, everything the way things are. And if I change that, if I just change your memory, you will accept this as so. But if you still have a little bit of a ghost previous memory there, you may say something like, wait a second, I don't remember this being here. Why is this here? And if you are aware of this, you may notice that there was a memory switch because you shifted to a different timeline where that timeline had to be rearranged in certain ways in order for you to have a certain amount of delay to meet, you know what I'm saying, trying to say, to synchronize everything for you. So during those shifts you may experience what it feels like a memory malfunction, that you remember things in a different way, but you probably do remember things correctly. It's just that now you have to accept that you're in a different timeline where things are different and you see things different, okay, or in different locations. So anyway, I just wanted to say this thing, that because sometimes you may feel like when you start alchemizing your emotions, where things start happening, and um, you may question your sanity, but it's all right. And I've been those four horsemen of apocalypse. I think in the last year I've gone through hell, abyss, um, this rigid habit thing, OCD, uh, and delirium too. Delirium was recent. But it seems that I gone through all of them. Delirium is a very tricky one because there is this thing that, how do you know that if it's real or it's a belief, right? Because everything that is permanent and immortal, that you can see truth, that's the truth, right? That's just the way things are, the principles, universal truth, not a personal truth. If you're talking about personal truth, that's the belief. And so when you are start coming across this phenomena, this the difference between the belief and truth, you may still live a bit of a delusion. That's your belief. And you know, like, all these beliefs, and people say like, well, believe in a twin flame, believe in unconditional love. Any belief is still a belief and not a real-time experience of it. So that's delirium, that's delusion, and you see a lot of people are in that delusion, and they're so important for them to hold on to that delirium, that delusion. No, that's how it all works, you know. And if you say like, all right, let's see if it's true, say no, I don't want to look at it. But if you really look at it, really honest, rational mind, and observe it to the core, you'll see that there's nothing there, that you're making all of that shit up because somebody wrote a book and described it, and now it became popular. Now everybody's talking about it, you know. But your mind may catch this and say like, well, that's the person is my twin flame or whatever. It's a delusion, okay? Yes, absolutely. There are people that you're meant to meet, and soulmates and all of that stuff. But to have this belief, right? Because, you know, if what the twin flame is describing is real, then belief is the opposite of that. It's a delusion. It's absolute delusion. You know what the twins are? Both of these are you. And that's the whole point. Is merging of the yin and the yang. That's the very primordial thing about the alchemy. That's what the twin flame is, if you will. Okay? And what kind of form it may take uh, outside of you, I really think that if you are beginning this journey, you know, or this way of life, I suppose I should say way of life, because it's I mean, call it journey, but it's a way of life through alchemy, and not away from the emotions. If you start living like that, the people that are going to be around you, they're going to play certain roles. They're going to play certain roles for you, right? But if you were to in like different side of the world and you met different people, these people would play different roles for you. It's not personal. You're going through this journey, and the universe has to reflect it somehow, right? And you may even notice, man, like that's why to be completely rational and honest, it's not easy, but that's what really sets us free. And yes, you'll go through it. You'll go through, there's all this process and whatever, and there's going to be so-called a holy matrimony and heroes gamos. Little by little, the yin and the yang is merging into one. They're separate but together at the same time. That's what happens when you live in this direction, and that may reflect something outside of you. The person may come into your life, but that now you know it's for real. It's not your belief. You don't have no beliefs anymore. And you don't say like, well, I wonder if this person is the one or whatever. There's none of that fucking thing, because that's a belief. If you're wondering, it's a doubt. It's a belief. And so how can you, you can only like dream what it's like, but you can't live it until it's there. And if you live in the belief system, you're not living it. I hope I'm communicating this well. As long as you believe in twin flames, you will never meet your counterpart that you can be happy with, because you still live in the belief. When all the beliefs are gone and you feel whole in your heart, just like with any other desire, that will be reflected to you. Okay? You can't live in this direction the same way you lived in the other one. Just can't do it. I'm speaking from experience. Trust me. In this direction, things are very different, and you can't squeeze back the belief again, because if you do, you go into delirium, and you have to alchemize that back again. And I don't understand that people seem to double down on it, I see all these videos made on how handle the conflict between each other, between genders and stuff like that. More and more of these, I don't know, maybe it's just my feed, but I seem to listen or watch different content, but they seem to still coming in And I think that's the popularity algorithm and not what I'm watching. Because sometimes YouTube will feed you not what I'm watching, but what's popular also. And so, because sometimes what I'm watching, they may have 200 views, and it's a very interesting video. Somebody's, on the same wavelength. And then another video with the 3 million views, and just complete fucking trash, nonsense. Popular because it hit the spot um, that many people in the matrix. You know what I'm saying? Trying to say. I think I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for watching. See you next one.